Hello, this is Kathleen from Jay's Art Studio in Dallas, Texas. Today we're going to be finishing up the acrylic painting of the chocolate cream pie. What I had done since the last video is I sketched out where I wanted the chocolate bits to go on top, and I did an underpainting of those chocolate bits. I also did a little bit more detail work on the edges of the chocolate. Today what we're going to do is we're going to do the shading in the actual in the white part, and then we'll do the shadows in the chocolate bits and in the crust. If we have some time, then we'll hit it with the highlights as well. And let's get started. I mixed raw umber with white to get a sort of a warm gray. If we did a cool gray, it would look not too appetizing. So here we go. I'm just going to be filling in where the shadows go on the white part here. That will also help cover up that pink that's underneath. Yes, a nice coat underneath there. We'll clean it all up and we'll give it a nice shadow. If you use just black and white, it wouldn't look too appealing as far as food goes. That's why I'm using the raw umber. And getting that all in there. Where all the dark parts go. It's okay if it gets a little messy on the edge. We're going to be cleaning that up later with more of that chocolate color. Going by with what I'm seeing here on the actual photo. Here we go. Detail work takes kind of a long time, so I'm going to stop the video every so often just so that it doesn't become tedious to look at it happening, and that I can take my time getting it exactly where I want it to go. We're just doing the shadows here now. And then we'll bump up with the white later on. Let's see. There we go. It's okay if it mixes with that chalk. I did the chalk outlining in a brown color. There we go. That's getting all nice and cleaned up. And all underneath here. Now I'm using a smaller brush than the last time. This is to get more details. This is an angle brush, and I picked the angle brush so that I can get into some tight spaces like in here. And a larger brush would just cover up too much area. So your brush is important as far as size and shape. Okay, maybe a little in here. And I'm going to stop the video here so that I can kind of get that in there a little bit more, maybe a second coat on that. Okay, so I've got all the darks into the white area, and now we're going to do the shadows on the chocolate bits on top. I'm going to use that same angled brush so I can get into the sharper crevices of it. And for the dark part of this, I'm going to use the raw umber straight up. The raw umber is a brown that has more of a grayish tint, and I think that that would be good for the shadow parts of the chocolate here. There we go. Now, if this doesn't go dark enough, I can always add black to it to make it go even darker, and I think I'm going to have to do that. Let's see, let me grab some of back. And, add a little black to that raw umber so that it becomes a darker brown. There we go. There we go. Yeah, that's better. There we go. Oh yeah, that's much better. Okay. Detail work takes a while. Take your time and to get exactly what it is that you want out of it. And it starts coming together. Becomes looking more three-dimensional. Yeah. Grab a smaller brush here. So you can really get into those tight spots. There we go. I'm using a relatively small round because what I'm painting is round. There we go. Straighten that line out. And I'm just painting what I see here. Later I'll hit it with a highlight on top to really make it stand out. Okay, here we go. And again, take your time, make sure you get everything in the right places. And I am going to keep going here with this all the way around to all these little chocolate bits. And then we'll come back and hit the highlights on the cream here, and then we'll go into the base here. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got all the shadows under the chocolate, and now we're going to bump up the white. So I'm going to take a nice puffy brush because the cream is puffy, and I'm going to go back in here, and I'm doing a kind of a swirling motion to give it some texture of it being a soft, billowy thing. You can do this with clouds as well. That works well. And you just kind of bump up the white. Nice and bright whipped cream here. Get rid of all of that pink that's underneath. And let's see here. And in here a little bit. Same in here. And we'll be right back. Okay, nice and bright white. There we go. Here. Bump that all up. Now, acrylics aren't going to be super realistic, so we're not going for realism. Going for a sort of an abstract version of it. All right. There we go. Let's soften out these edges a little bit. See how I'm just kind of tickling it on the very edge. I'm not really placing too much, because that's it'll get really solid if you go on its side, but it'll stay nice and bright and puffy if you just use the very end of it, the bristles there. And everything's relative. Now that I'm doing this, the darks that I put in look pretty dark, whereas before they hardly showed up at all. There we go. get rid of all that pink that's underneath. Keeping everything nice and bright. There we go. There it is. A little more over in this area. Carefully going around all the little shadows that I've got here. And yeah. Okay. Getting to look more appetizing here. Back up here. Get rid of that pink. Bring that up a little bit more. Lighten this area up. There we go. Everything becomes brighter with a second coat of white. Swirling motions give it a puffier, softer, billowy look. When you're doing clouds in a landscape, that's the motion you want to do. You lay in the color like this, and then you soften it out by tickling the ends there. But you need a soft brush. Add a little bit in there. Work our way over here. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll go into the chocolate here and add some highlights in there because I want this to be the dark. I mean, there's some super dark areas in here, but I'm going to just go back in there with the lighter chocolate. And I can get the highlights on this as well. There we go. Putting it in, softening it out. Putting it down, softening it out. There we go. Get the edge of that nice and bright. I can always add some more a little bit later if I need to. That looks pretty good. Oops, that wasn't dry. That's okay. Everything can be covered up. Perfect. Happy mistakes, right? Okay, all right, so now we're going to go to highlighting the chocolate. And I am going to add some burnt sienna. It's got a reddish tint to it. And I think that'll be just perfect. I'm going to go back to that angle brush so I can get some, let's see how bright this is. Everything's, you know, relative again. See, that might be just a little too bright. So I'm going to mix in some of that burnt sienna, or I'm sorry, raw umber, to tone down that intensity. There we go. Let's let that mix in there. Acrylics, remember, it dries darker. So you make everything a little bit lighter than you think it should be, and then it'll dry exactly the color that you want it to be. Okay. There we go. Put that in here. Get that little bit of a reddish tint going on. Okay, so we are working on the chocolate in here, and we're adding some highlights down below. And I am using a burnt sienna. It's got some red in it. I need to get some more red down in here so that it becomes more brighter chocolate. Looks more like milk chocolate than dark chocolate. Let's see here. We are going to be working some areas here. There we go. And I am working on parameters on where I'm actually wanting the lights to go. Getting some brighter edges on some of that chocolate. So it looks like the slice has been sliced. It's not super smooth in here, so I'm going to kind of let the paintbrush skip. A little skipping. So that it looks like it has got some fluff to it. Okay, working on some areas in here. It was just too dark, too flat, and it looked like a dark chocolate to me, so which is what I prefer, but this is a milk chocolate slice here. Now, acrylics dry darker, so I'm putting on it. It looks, pretty bright, but it will actually, when it dries, will go darker. And you just kind of let that skip around again to give it kind of a billowy look. I'm using that smaller brush so that it has more detail. Soften that edge there. And there we go. All right, it's looking pretty good. And after this, we'll be adding some highlights into the chocolate bits up there. There we go. And some detail. Go up a little higher there. There we go. The edge is a little brighter. There we go. And I don't want it to be, I want it to have some edges that are not perfectly perfect. There we go. Get that a little bit, come in a little bit further here. I'm just kind of feeling it out. Okay. Okay. So I took that little break there to answer a phone, and also just to kind of do some more details on the chocolate here. The bottom part of this is not as dappled as the top part is, so I'm just going to take this softer paintbrush and kind of rub it in to give it the still it's going to be soft, but it's not going to have that dappled look. It's going to be more smooth, and I'm just taking this and just kind of rubbing it in. Let's add a little bit more over here just to kind of lighten that area. And there we go. The sienna was not